Hey there, berries. Welcome to a season 2025, the first patch of the season tier list. It's been a long time since I've done tier lists on a regular basis. The main reason why we put them on hold is because I wasn't playing League as much. I was taking a little break from League, and then even when I came back to it around about November, I didn't really feel like, because I'd taken that break, I didn't feel like I was a reliable source to give out information again until I felt like I got back into the gist of it, started climbing up again, and that's probably why this tier list is also taken about a week to come out. Just wanted to make sure that I was on point really with this patch. Not sure what's happening in the next patch, but I will do another tier list for next week, updating on the current one. What we're going to do in this video is that we're going to cover the fundamental changes to this patch to League. We're not going to go like super in depth, but we're going to do a quick overview and then how that affects the support role. That we're going to be talking about when you should buy boots on the support role, how you're going to be playing around the objectives, and how that kind of affects the meta as playing a support. Then after that, we're going to jump into the tier list, and then go from tier 5 all the way up to tier 1. What I will always say with these tier lists, if you're used to me saying this, these tier lists are kind of geared around if you are unranked to around about plat ELO. ELO, the meta shifts a lot as you go through. So really between like unranked and silver, there's like one little bit of meta, and then there's a slight shift over, and then there's a slight shift over again. The absolute best champions here for like top ELO are not like in the it's a whole different tier list for that, and there's no point me making a tier list for like the top 200 people in League. You know, wouldn't get that many views. But here are the actual system changes that are in League. So if you haven't played on it already, awesome themed, Noxus themed. There's a new boss that spawns at the 20-minute mark called Atakan. He can spawn on the top or the bot lane river, depending on how much fighting that has been going on. Also, roses that spawn around the map, depending where there's been fighting and where people have died. Seeds will be basically planted, and then they will bloom, and then those roses will give you adaptive force and XP, but that's team-wide and permanent. So it's a little bit like the Infernal Cinders if you're familiar with the dragons, but you have to play that minigame. Everyone on your team will be playing this minigame where you're just attacking a flower, and then you get a permanent buff for your entire team. So that's Atakan. Then you have the petals that come from Atakan. Those stop spawning after Atakan is killed. And then you got the boots upgrade. And I'm expecting the boots quest, let's just call it objective, to change as the season kind of goes on. So if you're not aware, there are 3 objectives at the start of the game, and the first team to complete 2 of them get an opportunity basically to upgrade their boots to tier 3 at a cost of, at the moment it's 750 gold. These boots have already been nerfed, by the way, you aren't aware, and it also, at least in terms of a support perspective, they're overrated. Okay, I'll get into why when we get to this, but the boots are very overrated, but you should still go for the objective. There's still a net positive overall, but we'll get into it in a minute. So basically for the objectives, at the moment it's first blood. I'm expecting them to change it to unique kills, like 3 unique kills maybe. First tower, and then the first team to complete 3 epic monsters. Now interestingly, in the epic monsters category, if your jungler does grubs, but the enemy jungle steals 1, you don't get epic monster count. So it does end up having potentially a long drawn out quest, which actually is quite fun, where because both teams have stolen grubs. They don't count as epic monsters. And then you got the Herald and the Dragons counting that as that, and it can prolong the quest for a really long time, up to even when Atakan spawns. So I've had a couple of games where no one's had completed the Boots quest until like 20 minutes, maybe just over 20 minutes. I know in a lot of games generally though, that quest is completed probably around about the 10 to 15 minute mark. So if you don't know the boots upgrade, you get a minor boot upgrade for free if you have tier 2 boots or when you buy tier 2 boots. But you have the option, if you do complete the quest for your team, that you can buy tier 3 boots for 750 gold, which I'm sure in this list. So we talked about the Atakan already. We talked about the petals. These are the boot upgrades here, the minor boot upgrades. So if you've already got steel caps, you're going to get +5 armor, etc. And then you have the paying amount of money, 750 gold, to get the upgrades after this. These boot upgrades are expensive, especially for a support generally. They're pretty expensive at 750 gold. If you compare that to any other completed support item, this is generally like over a quarter towards a core item. So if you do pick this up, basically as soon as you're available to do it, you need 2 legendary items on you, but the support ward item counts as 1. And then say if you've got like, you're playing an enchanter and you got a moonstone, you then have the option to buy like the Crimson Lucidity from the Ionian Boots of Lucidity. But you'll be delaying like a redemption or a dawn core really quickly. So you will kind of lose your gold advantage probably that you have at this point to invest into this item, where you're getting 10 haste, 5 movement speed, which honestly, you know, for the 750 gold, it's not worth it at all. And then upon damaging an enemy with a spell, using a spell or buffing an ally, gain movement speed for 4 seconds. So in basically most cases, it's going to be 8% for everyone, for enchanters picking this up. 8% movement speed is a decent, respectable amount, but you need to be thinking about how often you're going to be getting that buff. If you're playing something like Sona and you're mashing the aura, you're basically going to have like near 100% uptime on this. If you're playing something like Janna, well, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because okay, you're buffing an ally with a shield, so they get the buff, but unless you're constantly peeling and things like that, then you're going to get weird spikes in uptime in it, and it ends up being much more harder to calculate in terms of actual value. I personally, when playing something like a Janna or a Nami, for example, I am avoiding picking this item up unless I know there's a key objective that we are definitely going to be fighting for, and I need an upgrade now rather than waiting. I think like buying the tier 3 item, or the tier 3 boots, as like I need something now to turn the tide in this next team fight that is about to happen in the next minute. I think that is an okay situation where to pick it up, because you're building towards something that you would have taken anyway, and you will have that minor upgrade towards the next fight. But if it's like there's nothing happening for 3 minutes, there's no reason to delay getting a redemption or something like that. The redemption will have way more value if you're using it properly than something generically passive like this. It's the same as well with the Sorcerer's Shoes upgrade, the Spellsinger Shoes. I'll talk about that in a second. This is a good upgrade, but I'll get into it in a second. The plated steel caps that give you generic shield and offer physical, and one for magic resistance. Once again, these are generically like nice little boosts, but if it's going to delay you from potentially getting a Knight's Vow, an Abyssal Mask to amplify your team's damage, then this ends up being like a bit more of a distraction than it really should be. Now the Spellsinger's Shoes, it's a pretty damn good upgrade. This has now gone down to 8% magic penetration. All of these numbers are wrong. I think if you go to the patch notes that Riot has posted, they've got the new numbers now. I'll have to scroll all the way back up for that. But yeah, it's gone down to 8%. So these boots have already been nerfed. percent penetration works is the more resistances that the enemy has, the more value you get from this. Okay, you get +3 magic penetration. But once again, if the enemy team is not picking up magic resistance early or mid-game, right, you don't need this 10% magic penetration. You want raw AP. So once again, do not get distracted. This is a good item for late game because of the percentage penetration. But try not to get distracted too much by the fact that, oh my god, these boots are amazing. Treat them a little bit more like how AD carries are with the Berserker Greaves upgrade, or what that used to be like in terms of, I can't remember what the item was, but the item that they upgrade their boots from to. This is a similar process to that, in that you don't want to have these boots so early that you're taking away from the core itemization build of your path. You may have seen like win rates. Like, oh my god, if you like on u.gg, if you go to builds and you go like, oh my god, your win rate gets increased by 22% if you pick up these boots. It's like, well, yeah, but your team was probably winning the objectives anyway, and your team was probably going to likely win, more likely to win, right, the game, because they're communicating and doing objectives. They got the first turret or the first bud as well. Like, there are other elements to this as to why the boots are higher win rate. So yeah, don't get too distracted and don't buy these too early to deviate too much from your core itemization build that you should be going for. Teleport did get changed. Just a heads up if you're not completely aware. Teleport does take a lot longer in the early game but it means at the same time enemies can teleport to anywhere again, like ward or minions, from minute 1. So if you're not paying attention to the map sometimes, you could end up having like a top laner come in behind you through a deep ward, and that would ruin your day. But it does take a long time. I think it's 8 seconds. It's the travel time, 8 seconds. It says potentially over 8 seconds, so depending on where they are on the map already. So you would have to be quite vastly like deep in the lane to get caught out by this, but that's something that you're going to need to factor in from now on. Interestingly also, not necessarily, I can find it, oh here we go, minion XP range. So this is pretty good if you're playing up against double poke and you're in a situation where they've held the lane and you know the enemy jungle's there and there's nothing you can do as a 2. You're kind of just standing there. It means that you're allowed to get into range slightly more in order to get that XP. Also, it makes it more difficult for you to not get level 2 from not being in XP range, from being denied. So that's a little bit more advanced stuff there, but it's nice that now the XP range. Also, a massive note on the turrets as well. The turrets do so much damage now. So be very careful when diving. Diving is extremely dangerous now, particularly in the first few levels. You'll get absolutely rinsed if you try to tower dive in the level 1 to level 3. So basically, without going through the technical details, turret raw damage is a lot and the amplifying damage is crazy, and that lasts a long time as well now. So when the turret amps up, and then if you like de-aggroed it and then re-aggroed it, if the damage of the next shots would be like quite tame. Well, that tameness is going to take a longer time for it for the turret to kind of chill out. So be very careful under the turret, basically. Nothing else really in terms of system mechanics now. In terms of actual champion changes, they didn't really do a whole lot. I think they tried to buff Ashe here, but they did a bad job of it. Ashe right now is not looking too great. Callista, I haven't seen her being played too much, but they did a bunch of stuff to her. They tried to buff AP Twitch ever so slightly. But basically, in terms of general champion changes, there's nothing for us as support mains to really care about compared to the previous season. But I'll touch on a big problem right now with AD carries and how it's affecting support once we get into the kind of the tier list stuff. There's a new item here called Bloodletter's Curse. So it's a bit like Black Cleaver and how that shreds armor. This item shreds magic resistance. So if you are playing with like an AP heavy team, this makes it so it's a bit less punishing if you're playing like a Zyra or a Brand with like an AP carry Victor or something like that that's been played a lot. So I actually haven't had the opportunity to buy this item yet. I've not played a whole amount of AP carries. I've done like a Brand game, a Zyra game, maybe even, I think I've done a Xerath game. I wouldn't buy this on Xerath though, but Brand is like a really good kind of I mean, as it says here, actually, Brand will also like this item because it activates off passive ticks. So you're going to be shredding the enemy's magic resistance a lot. The problem is that it does deviate. It's not like an item you're going to want to buy like first or second. So I found it difficult to actually get this as like a third item because it's like still reasonably expensive at 2.9k. Whereas when you're picking like Black Cleaver, like on Senna, for example, you're generally buying that first item. So you could potentially go into some sort of like utility AP support where it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to be doing quite as much damage this game, but I'm going to be enabling my team by going like Rylai's, Bloodletter's Curse, Brand, and then like third item, like go Leandries or something. Like that is something that you can do. I haven't tested taking it super early or not, but once again, it does really depend, like if the enemy is taking magic resistance early. If they are, this item will have more value. They did some stuff to Heartsteel, and Unending Despair, Warmogs as well. There's some minor changes, but nothing here is really affecting support that much. Here, like Tom Kent would probably consider going Heartsteel, like I've done that recently. Unending Despair is a weird item as well because it's quite expensive as well. Warmogs, we really shouldn't be taking that on support really on the whole. There's some like off kind of meta builds where I think some people were doing like maybe Warmogs and Brand or not Brand, Bard or Soraka, but I wouldn't recommend it. They've also taken like the movement speed off of the Warmogs, so it makes it less lucrative. Like a Bard player would probably take it now anyway. Got some interesting wards though for support. I think the best support rune that's come through, especially if you are going into the domination tree. So that's like if you're playing maybe like a Arcane Comet Zyra with domination secondaries, or you're going like a Dark Harvest build. This is quite difficult to take on enchanters though, but Deep Ward is really good and really annoying to deal with at the moment. The extra duration when you're planting a ward in the enemy jungle and the +1 HP is crazy annoying. Like +1 HP on a ward doesn't sound like too much, but you're wasting more time on someone else's Oracle's Lens. Plus also they're standing on the spot still for like an extra second or two instead of doing more macro stuff. So it delays the enemy support or jungler by quite a significant amount of time, and it's so annoying to deal with. So yeah, just a heads up on that one. Sixth Sense, I think I haven't tried it, but honestly it sounds absolutely kind of garbage. It's like they're trying to do an Umbral Glaive thing with it, but it's like enchanters can't even get into this rune tree anyway, and if I was playing like a mage like a Zyra, like the Deep Ward is just better than the Sixth Sense because you can get more Deep Wards down the equivalent of doing the Sixth Sense. Grizzly Mementos is an interesting one, but I don't really think it's super support viable. So it's like get 4 trinket ability haste, so you'll be able to get your oracles up more often. But unless maybe like you're up against like a Teemo or some lots of traps, I wouldn't really bother going with the oracles. Like if you're up against a Teemo, the Grizzly Mementos would do quite well because you should in theory then have a lot lower cooldown on your trinket, on your oracles. You can clear out more of those wards. But other than that very like kind of niche specific scenario, I personally wouldn't really bother. Axiom Arcanist is a very interesting rune. I've tried it a couple of times on Soraka and once on Janna. It's good on Soraka. Janna, I'm feeling a little bit mixed about it, but it's particularly good on Soraka because this is in the sorcery tree, and you would be replacing your mana flow band for Axiom Arcanist. Soraka has quite good base mana regeneration rate, so she's not that affected by not having it. Janna is affected a little by it. I wouldn't bother necessarily taking this on many other champions. A lot of the enchanters and mages in the bot lane have mana issues quite badly early on, and not having mana flow banned does feel pretty icky. But yeah, Soraka is probably the absolute prime candidate for this. And it would mean that you get your ulti refunded a little bit quicker. It does mean your ulti heals for a little bit more. So if you feel like you're okay with your mana management, give it a go and see how it goes, really, to be honest. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it's bugged on Karma. Karma would be an interesting candidate for it, but there was something I read on the Karma mains Reddit at some point where someone said this was bugged. I think it was maybe the damage portion of it was maybe bugged. So heads up on that regarding Karma. Is that everything? Right, so we're going to go into the actual tier list. Just a heads up, Mel's coming out next patch if you're wondering. So next week pretty much should be Mel. Man, it feels a bit nostalgic coming back to this after maybe about half a year. The do not play section has been buffed up behind my head as a Jarvan. I would highly not recommend any of these champions in tier 5. There are a couple of people would probably like want to try a couple of them. I myself have done like the Zoe support. But once again, this tier list is catered to unranked to plat, and honestly, if you just want pure LP gains, just not play anything in tier 5. And honestly, the same again for tier 4. These tier 4 champions are slightly more viable. You might be surprised to see Brand there, especially when he's able to use the Bloodless's Curse. But he's suffering a lot. I think he got some nerfs at some point last season. They hit him quite a lot actually, and I don't think he's ever really recovered from that. I think he was strong in jungle when they tried to do the jungle thing, and then they nerfed him in jungle, and then they realized, oh, he's actually pretty good in low elo support finally. They had noticed, and then they just kind of kicked him in the teeth. There are other AP options that are actually pretty good right now. There's a new AP support up there as well. That has been doing pretty well. I'll talk about them when I get there, but yeah, a lot of these champions have been kind of falling off pretty heavily right now. The Teemo's now dropped down into tier 4 from tier 2. Pyke's also having a really bad time right now. There is some weird outlying stuff. There's one here, this Fiddlesticks, right? Statistically speaking, Fiddlesticks support is actually working for people. I just don't think anyone should learn how to bother playing it, honestly. It's so off meta, and this, like, maybe, who knows, the person watching this video is a OTP Fiddlesticks jungle thinking about playing support. Apparently, dude, Fiddlesticks can work. So it might be the weird outlier for this entire season, but Fiddlesticks support apparently has potential, but it's not something that I would recommend anyone learn, at least at the moment. Give it a couple more patches just to kind of, is a really weird one. So yeah. Yeah, Blitzcrank's having a really hard time right now. He's like another easy kind of like support to play with. He's having a really hard time. So all of these champions here are having just really, really bad time. Either their damage is too low, or either too squishy, or yeah, they're just struggling because the meta is just completely off right now. I think a thing to take in mind with this is that a lot of AD carries are just not viable right now. Your main AD carry that's doing well right now is Misfortune, I believe, with a kind of like a mix of Fallacy build. But you're going to be finding that there's a lot of AP carries that you're going to be laning with. There's lots of Victors, Hueys, AP carry Seraphines, all that kind of stuff are being played right now. Lots and lots of APs in the bot lane. AP Lux, like AP Swain. There's a lot of APs. I expect in the next couple of patches, AD carries will probably get buffed, whether it's items or individual based. I'm expecting probably more likely early scaling and lane buffs, but we'll have to wait and see for that. But yeah, Brand is probably the one that's surprises me the most in terms of like how he's generally for years and years been a really good lower ELO champion to play, but he can't even kind of do well anymore. with there being so many objectives on the map at one point as well, you got like, you know, this stuff going on constantly. You would think that generally roaming supports are doing quite well right now, but people are generally over fixating on like one objective on the opposite side of the map, and then they're neglecting their own lanes quite a lot. So what's actually happening is that there are a lot of people that feel panicked and going to objectives like crazy in order to help to try and almost force things to happen. That ends up usually the kind of backfiring at the moment for a lot of people. And then the people that are playing 2v1 in like the bot lane are generally able to punish the person by themselves quite a lot. And that's how they end up getting the win throughout the game. That could change as the season goes on, as maybe more and more people get more experienced with the changes going through. So you could end up seeing like a roaming meta coming into it. But at the moment, we're not at that stage where players are at a state where they feel comfortable with the game, honestly. But that could quickly change over the next couple of patches. Moving over to tier 3, there's a little something that has been on my little radar for the last couple of weeks, and that's Elise support. I personally have not tested it. I don't think it's like super duper OP. Once again, it's one of those champions where like if you've played Elise jungle a lot, give it a go. You might actually find that it works. Win rate also doing quite well on her. I've not personally seen her in any of my games, but I am aware that there are even challenger supports playing Elise support right now. So keep an eye on that one, okay? If you want something a bit more off, like bit weird, like if you want to play Teemo, but you know you're gonna get flamed for playing Teemo and want to play something off meta, maybe try some Elise. But generally, anything in this tier 3 at the moment is doing like okay, 50-ish% win rates. You know, not too difficult champions to play honestly here either. Most of these champions, apart from probably the Elise, is probably the highest mechanical champion here, honestly. Nothing too crazy there. Standard tanks there. Annie support could come up on the rise. I think she's a little bit undervalued right now. I did do a video recently trying her out, and I think there is potential there, doing like the Rylai's first item. If people hit your shield and they get slowed, there's definitely potential there. I think Karma also might be a thing to keep an eye on, as we mentioned about the Axiom Arcanist being potentially bugged on her. Might be worth keeping an eye on her, as her laning phase could get a little bit stronger if that does potentially gets fixed. Moving up to tier 2. Tier 2, we have a little bit of a shift here. I decided to bring Soraka down from tier 1 to tier 2 compared to last time. I think she's still really good. Anything in tier 2 here is at the moment is doing pretty well. I just think there's a couple of enchanters that do better than her right now. And I just felt like a bit too many enchanters in tier 1 really. I felt like she was like the least good out of the ones that are good, if that makes sense. Lulu's having a spike up, which is weird to me. Lulu feels like she's heavily dependent more on if your AD carry is good, but I'm even seeing her being played with like AP carries, and it's catching me off guard on the raw numbers that she brings and the individual crowd control with polymorph with her W does bring a good amount of value. I'm still not 100% sure about Lulu being tier 2, but statistics are saying like otherwise that she's like a good support. I personally have seen like, you know, people play like Lux Lulu bot lane. I think we had like Victor Lulu bot lane. It's like, it just feels so weird that those champions shouldn't meld together, and when I'm laning against it, it doesn't feel like it's working. But for some reason, statistically wise, it's too hard to ignore to not put her in tier 2 basically. Taric is another weird one. Like if you go by win rates of a couple of websites, Taric is tier 1. I think Taric is really a tier 2. I think there are some Taric OTPs that are maining him and inflating his win rate slightly. I think he is good bashing heads against melee champions, but there aren't that many melee supports in particular that are being played still right now. is still slightly geared towards Enchanter meta. So, and yeah, like there's not many tanks that Tarek is going to get his opportunity to bash his mace on, really. If Tarek gets the melee and just like do Q spams all the time, he's really, really good. But those opportunities are quite rare, honestly. Maokai is also seemingly doing quite well right now at catching up potential. I think with him, he has good first blood potential. So that could be causing a tilting element for the enemy team. Like you get first blood potentially relatively easy of Maokai. Also, he has a mechanic where he can kind of dodge the turret shot out with his twisted advance. I think that's still in the game. So he has the ability to kind of nullify those big juicy turret hits as well. It's making tower dives slightly easier. So that could be another reason why he's doing a little bit better right now. Other than that, I still feel like he is quite a little bit of a risky pick to take, but has a more consistent engage than the Leona. The only thing obviously you need to be aware of is that you don't want to be twisted advancing onto a target and then that target then flashes under the turret and then you kind of stuck the under turret and you're going to be taking a couple of tower hits. So be careful how you play that. Vel'Koz and Zyra. Vel'Koz and Zyra are... Zyra in particular is the queen of unranked to silver. She's number 1 right now. She starts falling off in Plat Plus. So Vel'Koz is, I think, actually takes over in rating after Plat-ish compared to the Zyra. I think the reasoning is big because Zyra is an easier champion to play. And it's easier to get your full kit damage off on a target than it is compared to Vel'Koz. However, if you're able to land your full kit with Vel'Koz, potential damage is much higher, particularly because it's true damage. And I believe there's percent health damage in that kit as well. So it largely comes down to mechanics. If you're a very good mechanical player, I would suggest if you want to play AP, lean more towards that Vel'Koz. If you're not completely sure on your mechanical capabilities but you want to play AP, I would suggest sticking with Zyra, because as long as you like auto attack a target after you've done your plants will prioritize that target. So okay, you've missed your like Q for example, but at least your plants are still offloading damage, whereas you don't have that if you're playing Vel'Koz. If you whiff everything, then you're doing no damage. So yeah. Trying to move off this tier briefly, but yeah, the Senna is doing pretty well right now with Bloodsong. I think Summon Airy seems to be the best keystone to go. Summon Airy, Senna is one that I would suggest. Try not to do Grasp. Grasp just feels gross. Would not recommend that, but my recommendation would be Airy Senna. Poppy's generically been doing well now for about a year, but once the game requires a lot of knowledge on her. Milio, I'm not sure about the Milio. Actually, I think I've maybe placed him too high. I think that might be an actual mistake, so I do apologize for that in the actual tier list. I think he's actually more like a tier 3. I'm not sure how you managed to sneak in there. But yeah, I think Milio is actually a tier 3. I think his disengage potential against a lot of crowd control is always good. The problem right now is that his campfire amplifying 80 carries, there's just not that many 80 carries he can amplify. Not many people are playing Caitlyn, Jhin, Aphelios, like those kind of champions he excels really nicely with. He can do well with Lucian with the passive stuff, but once again, there's not many good Lucian players to utilize it. So there's not many champions that are good in the meta right now to link up with Milio. So you can do well if you need your ulti up against a lot of crowd control, but on the whole, I don't think he's actually tier 2. I think he's tier 3. Right, moving up to tier 1. These are basically your big picks right now. Expect potentially Tahm Kench not necessarily going to be as good in tier 1 because I think he is getting enough because he's definitely too strong in top. So expect a Tahm Kench nerf. Which means that Tahm Kench could fall down in the patch next week. I think the next patch is. So If you're looking for a new champion to main, maybe don't play Tom Kench. Brom is doing very well as a tank. For me personally, I think he's very easy to play as well. You have that roaming potential that you can do. He's very good in the 2v2, whether you can play aggressively if you have the opportunity to with your jungler, or play quite defensively. The wall is very good under tower dives as well. Yeah, he is very good right now, and I think he's being very underplayed right now too. So if you do want something to main that's a tank and you want to play like a tanky Janna almost, Brom is the go-to right now. I think he's going to be strong for quite some time. So yeah, Sona, Janna, and Nami in that order right now. So Sona, Janna, Nami. That's 1, 2, 3 in terms of how I would rate them. Sona's probably the best enchanter right now. She utilizes the tier 3 CDR boots really nicely because she gets perma uptime on those with her aura spammage. Also, enemies are generally playing a lot of AP carries in the bot lane, and honestly, AP carries aren't as scary in the early game, so it generally gives Sona a free ticket to scale up in a game, in most games. So it means that you're not really having to worry about dying, which is great because it means you can go like tier if you want to and stack up a Seraph's Embrace, but whatever. Anyway, it's just like you just get to coast through the laning phase, and you maybe have a potentially slightly rough like early part of the mid game, but after that you're just flying. Very easy to play, mashing all the buttons on the keyboard and you'll be fine. Janna, a champion that has also been doing very well for maybe 4 or 5, 6, maybe more years now, just generally like tier 1, tier 2 in solo queue. Very safe champion, potentially can do some minor aggressive plays. The one downside to playing Janna right now though is that you're not necessarily benefiting as much from the AD buff from your shield, because there's just a lot more AP carries being played on the bot lane right now. So it's potentially hard to get that extra utility out, but I think you can still play her with an AP carry if you need that disengage. And then once again, Nami is doing well as well. Once again, a lot of AP carries in the bot lane. She does well with AP carries and ADs just because the way her E works, it applies on both auto attacks and abilities. So it doesn't really matter who you're playing with, you're going to be getting that E value anyway. You got Peel, you got Engage, you got Disengage, you've got everything you kind of need on Nami to play with whatever you want with, honestly, in the bot lane. She works generically quite well with everyone. Healing Nami is my favorite right now, going Imperial Mandate into Moonstone, into a Dawn Core. The healing numbers, if you manage to acquire 3 of those items, are pretty fantastic. Maybe slight downside with the Nami is that like I don't really care too much about the tier 3 boots upgrade. Don't really care about the uptime on that. I just want to get that healing percentage and get that racking up for my team and just see those big huge numbers once they start bouncing. Generally getting, if there's no anti-heal on the enemy team, once you've got those 3 items per every W, you're probably doing around 700 to 800 healing on the double heal. Like if you do ally heal and then ally heal from the bounce, it's like about 800 in total. It's kind of crazy. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. I'll be doing another one for the next patch at some point next week, I think. So yeah, expect more tier lists. Expect more support League of Legends content. I'm going to be doing some off-roll content on the Bizzleberry 2 channel. So do check that out. I did upload an AP carry Hui game. So yeah, I'm also multi-streaming on Twitch and YouTube. So you're going to be seeing my streams on YouTube a bit more often. By a bit more, I mean I should be here pretty much almost every single day, unless I ever decide to take a little break. But yeah, all my League of Legends streams are going to be on Twitch and YouTube. So thank you to everyone that's been supporting me. We had a great stream today, and I expect to do another great stream tomorrow. So all the best, guys. Take care. Hope the tier list helps you out, and good luck in the season 2025. Bye bye.